All right. I'm Sheila Tamala with the WDE. I'm on the monitoring team. All of you should know me. And then I'll turn it over to Susie Wagner.
I'm Susie Wagner. I'm president of Data Driven Enterprises, a consulting company based in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a long-term consultant with WDE. Sheila, back to you.
All right. Sometimes I forget Susie's not WDE. She actually has her own. If you will click on the link in there, let me see if I can drop that into the chat.
I got it, Sheila.
Thank you. Susie's going to drop it in, just going in, and we're just keep attendance. Margie's not able to be here today, and we promised we would keep attendance, so she knew who was here. So if you'll click on the link in the chat and just go into the Google Sheet and fill in who's here today. So today what we're going to do is go through how to download your reports for your determinations, review the criteria for the two different or three different, I guess it's two that come together and make one overall determination, and then any additional factors that could end up affecting your determination ratings. So, all right, next slide, Susie. SPEDLink is where determinations, the last year, I think we put them on. This year, we felt like that was fairly successful, so we're going to go ahead and do that again. Just a reminder that that means that whoever has access to SPEDLink in your district will have access to your determination. That's a little bit different this year than it's been in the past. So if there's some, if you want to be sure that you know who has access to SPEDLink, because that's where your determinations will be housed.
And they're not there yet. So for those of you who've quickly logged in, trying to find them, they're not there, but they will be
there yet.
In
May 1st,
the static report
available
section
on SPEDLink, but they're not there yet. If you have questions about SPEDLink, you can reach out either to myself or Catherine Dunlap at Data Driven, and we will help you either with logins or any technical issues that you have. All right, Susie.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the report and explain the results indicators and the compliance indicators, and then explain how we take both of those to get an overall score. So just a couple of notes up front. The targets and scoring criteria for the results indicators stayed the same this year. Now, sometimes they don't stay the same, but since all of the targets, the 21-22 targets were identical to the 2021 targets, and so therefore we did not change any scoring criteria. But they will change next year, just to give you a heads up. And indicator 8 is the new variable that we're using this year, and it falls under results, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. For compliance indicators, the targets and scoring criteria stayed the same this year, and in fact, they always stay the same because the compliance targets, they're either 100% or 0%. Once I show you the example report, this will all make sense. So just to give you some context when you do get your report, because if you're like me, I always want to know, well, how do I compare to other people? And so you'll want to keep this in mind. So if we look at our compliance results, 37 districts met requirements, 8 needs assistance, 3 needs intervention. So the districts are doing a great job on the compliance indicators. For the results, 23 districts are in meets requirements, 14 needs assistance, 11 needs intervention. And then when we combine these two categories for our overall scores, we have 23 districts. So almost half are in meets requirements, 20 needs assistance, and just 5 in needs intervention. All right, let me show you an example report and point out a few things. So when you get your report, it's a 3-page report, and you have the first page gives you just a nice visual of how you scored on the 2 areas and how they summed up together. And I'll come back to that. Then the compliance indicators, and then the results indicators. So let's start with compliance. So compliance indicators are those indicators that OSEP requires states to use in determining district determinations. So states, they don't care what else you use. They just tell states that you have to use these. And so we in fact do. So for 4B, which is suspension by race, ethnicity, and then indicators 9 and 10, which have to do with disproportionate representation. As a district, you don't want this to be occurring. So your rate, ideally you'd have a 0% rate, which means that you did not have any significant discrepancy or disproportionate representation due to inappropriate identification. So on these, it's really just a yes, no. You either meet them or you don't. So if you don't have these bad things, you get 3 points. If you do have them, you get 0 points. And in this example, the district did not have these things, and so the district got 3 points. Then our next compliance indicators are one where the target rate is 100%. So we look at your timely evaluations and look to see what percentage of kids were evaluated within 60 days. So in order to get 3 points, you have to have a 100% score. And then you can see that the range is for getting 2 points, 90% or above, and then 1 point, 70% until almost 90. And then if your score is below 70%, you get 0 points. And transition planning is the same thing. So these last 3, they have the same ranges. If you get 100%, you get 3 points, and you can see the same ranges. Then what we do is we add up these points, total points possible. So for example, maybe one year you did not have any timely evaluations. This rarely happens except for some of the really small districts. And so we would not include that in the denominator. But we add up the total possible points, the total points you earned, percentage point earned, and then here is the category. So if you're at 100%, that means you are compliant on everything, then you're in meets requirement. So this is a tough one because if you miss just one timely evaluation, you're going to be in needs assistance. But keep in mind, this is what OSEP tells us as a state. And so we don't have any wiggle room. And so we need to hold the districts to the same targets that the state has. And Sheila, I assume if anyone has questions, you will interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
I will.
Okay. I'm not talented enough to monitor the chat and present, so thank you. All right, let's talk about results. This one's a little harder to comprehend, but I know you can do it. So here are the results indicators that a group of stakeholders a couple years decided to use for this results portion of determinations. So, and in general, just about all of the results indicators are on here. Now, we don't actually have indicator 8 parent results. We have a response rate, but for various reasons, we did not include that one. But other than that, I think we included all of them. So let me go through a couple of these so you know how to interpret them. So for each of these, you'll see the target rate. And these targets, they're the same rates you would have seen on your report cards that we made available last October. And then you'll see your district rate over here. By the way, these scores here, I just pulled from different districts. So don't try to figure out, well, which district is it? Because it's not actually a district. It's just a combination of different districts. But you'll see your rate here. You'll see the denominator on which a rate is based. So this, and this are all things you would have seen last October on your report card. So they should not come as a surprise to you for most indicators, but I'll explain that in a minute. Then we also added a district percentile score, just because in the past we'd get lots of questions like, well, how do I compare to other districts? And so that's what this will tell you. And so for this particular rate, 91.67, it's at the 82nd percentile, which means this district scored higher than 80 2% of districts. And then the next box shows you the criteria, so you know how to get 2 points. So on this one, unlike the compliance where you want to get 3 points in order to be in meets requirements, this one, as long as you hit the target, you're going to be in meets requirements. But we also wanted to award those districts with extra points if they go above and beyond the target. So some districts are doing really well in graduation or proficiency or LRE, and that's how you get those extra points. So you can see here, so the 2 points will always start out at the target, and 3 points. So if you're above 85% for graduation, you're going to get 3 points. It's like getting a bonus point, which is very important when we sum up all of these points. So that's graduation. Dropout, the target rate's 33.19%. Here it's a little hard to think about because you want a low dropout rate. So here you'll notice that in order to get 3 points, your score has to be 0 to 5%. So it's reverse scored. But you'll notice for 2 points, as long as your dropout rate's 33.19%, the target or below, you do get the 2 points. Then we have the state test participation and proficiency. So these are scores you wouldn't have seen on your report card because it's just one. If you recall, on your report card, you get 6 scores for participation, 6 scores for proficiency on the regular state test. So let me show you what we do to get 1 score. So I'm looking at the state report card here. So for participation, what we do is we average the target. This is an easy one because across all of these grade levels and ELA and math is the same target. So on determinations, our target is 95%. To get the state rate for determinations, we would average these 6 rates. So I don't know if you can see this on your screen, but down here in Excel, it shows us the average. So across these 6 categories, the average is 97.76. So that would be your determination score for participation. So if you want to double check my math, please do. You can get your private report card, look at these 6 scores, calculate an average, and that's what your score is for 3A. For 3B, it's the same thing. We just average these 6 scores, the proficiency on the regular YTOP, it's 13.97. And, oops, I was looking at the wrong thing. Good thing I'm checking my math here. Because this is a sample district. If I were looking at the state report, this would say 13.97. For a minute there, I thought I made a terrible mistake, but hopefully I've redeemed myself. But anyway, once you get your determination reports, feel free to look at your report cards and just double check these 2 scores. So we look at participation on both the YTOP and the YALT, and then we look at proficiency on just the YTOP. So we don't look at 3C, the alternate assessment scores on determinations because the numbers of students are very small at most districts. And then once again, you can see the ranges. So for this particular made-up district, it had a very high graduation rate, so got 3 points. It met the target for dropout, but didn't, go above and beyond. So it got 2 points. Test participation. This is one where you have to be at 100% to get the 3 points, but the target's 95%. So it's not bad getting a 2. But just as a heads up, this 97% may look really good, but it just gets the 2 points. Then for this district, the proficiency just got 1 point. So the overall proficiency rate, 11.48. So I can see that it falls in the 1 point range. Then we have the student growth percentile. So when we met with stakeholders a couple years ago, they said it was very important to look at something in addition to just proficiency, because there are some districts that may not have real high proficiency rates, but their students are growing. So maybe they have students at that below basic or basic level, but they're making growth within those levels. And of course, we want to see that as well. And so that's what this looks at. We just take the student growth percentiles for the students and calculate an average growth percentile. And so here, in order to, there's not an official target because this isn't an indicator we have to report out on to OSAP, but the stakeholders got together and decided if your average growth percentile was 42%, you get 2 points. So that's what you're aiming for. For this particular made-up district, they just missed it, so they got 1 point here. Then we look at LRE, same thing, the target rate, the district rate, and the ranges. So this district, 71.5 may seem high, but the target's actually 73.93 because over time, all of you have done such a great job in moving kids in the regular education classroom, at least 8% of the time, that we have to adjust our targets accordingly. So OSAP tells us we always have to be improving. So we can't just decide 70% is good enough, we're not going to improve. So in case you're wondering why this keeps increasing, that's why. So this particular district got 1 point. Then we get to post-secondary outcomes. This is where you do the phone calls a year after kids have either graduated, dropped out, or aged out. You call them up, you ask them, what have you been doing in the past year? Hopefully they are either enrolled in higher education, enrolled in some other type of education, are competitively employed, or have some other work experience. So that's 14C. So we don't include 14A or 14B. We're just looking at 14C. Here's the target. In this particular case, the district is at 50%. You can look at the range to see this district would have received 0 points. Now, the next two are on response rate. So here, you can either get 0 points or you can get 1 point. And so indicator 8, this is new, and we set the rate at 20%. And so as long as your response rate from 21-22 was 20% or higher, you will get 1 point. If it was lower, you will get 0 points. Similarly, for indicator 14, if your response rate's at least 60%, you'll get 1 point. If it's not, you'll get 0. And then we sum up the points, calculate the percentage of points earned, and here is the how we decide what category you're in. So notice for compliance, you had to be at 100% to be in meets requirements. For this one, you have to have a score of 66%. So as long as you meet the targets on all of these, so if this district would have had a 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, it would have been in meets requirements. Now, the nice thing of how we sum these up is that if you have a couple 3s, that can make up for a couple 1s, but just on average, we want you to be meeting the targets. So that's the results. I feel like I'm just flying through this, so I hope it's making sense. Please feel free to stop me if it's not. So then what we do is we take page 2 and page 3 and we just put it on this page to tell you whether or not you need assistance, meet requirements, or whatever the case may be. And then we sum these two up to get the overall score. Now I said sum up, but we do something a little differently. So we give results 75% of the weight and this 25% of the weight. So if I would take 75% times this score, 25% times this score, and add them up, I'd get 64.12. And we do that because the stakeholders decided that we needed to give the results a little more weight than compliance. Compliance is important, of course, but we really want to move the needle on graduation, LRE results, the indicator 14 results, proficiency, those types of things. So did that all make sense? Susan and Sheila are smiling at me, so I'm going to assume it did. But let's see here. I wanted to show you a couple other things. And can you see these? Is this large enough?
Maybe a little bigger, Susie.
Okay, there we go. So I wanted to show you the spread of scores. So this is something, once again, we've received questions in the past. Well, you know, are these really good targets? What about the high cut point? Maybe you've set it too high. So we just wanted to show you the spread of districts so you can judge for yourself how reasonable we were with our targets. And I think you'll see that in general, districts do very well on the determinations. So these first ones are compliance. So 4B, 9, and 10, all 48 districts got 3 points. And this has been the same for years. So Wyoming districts just don't have a problem with suspensions and disproportionate representation. So great job to all of you out there. For indicator 11, so here's the targets 100%, and 39 districts met the target. So once again, great job. There were 6 districts that had a score 2, just 1 that scored below the 70%. For indicator 13, 43 districts got a score 3. So you can see on compliance, districts are really scoring high. And then for timeliness, this has to do with, are you submitting your 684 and your self-assessment on time? And for 21-22, all 48 of you did. So all 48 got a score of 3. Now, if I go down to the results indicators for graduation, here's the target, and you'll see that 30 districts met the target. For dropout, 32, so more than half. For participation, 47 met the target, which is great. For proficiency, 25 met the target, so more than half. For the growth percentiles, 35 met the target, 39 LRE, 21 for post-secondary outcomes. So this was the lowest, but on this one, there were 42 districts that actually had scores. There were 6 districts that did not interview anyone, either because maybe they only had 1 or 2 and they couldn't get a hold of them, or they didn't have any kids to call. So occasionally that happens with some of our small districts. So this might look low, but it actually ended up being half the districts met the target. And for the response rate, 36 met the indicator 14 response rate, 41 met the indicator 8. So you can see in general, our districts are doing very well, but there are a handful of districts, if we look at this score 0, that we do see, for example, 13 districts got 0 points for indicator 14. And so hopefully in 22-23, some of these numbers will at least move up to indicator 1. Any question on the spread of the scores? All right then. Sheila, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we'll see what we had in store for us. So we've done that. We've done that. And Sheila now will talk about additional factors.
So just something to be aware of. If the determinations are made from your data, however, if you are in monitoring or if you have corrective action through fiscal monitoring, so RDA monitoring or fiscal monitoring, our rules make it clear that anybody who's in corrective action cannot be in a meets requirement, so you would be dropped a level. If you're in a compliance agreement, you cannot be in a meets requirements or needs assistance. And so sometimes that for districts is surprising when they get their determinations and they're in monitoring and don't realize that that can affect them. So just something to be aware of. And that would be noted on your determination. So, all right. like Susie and I said earlier, your determinations will be available to you on May 1st in SpedLink. So you can log in there and look. I'm sure that we will have them up very early on the 1st in the morning. But give us at least till noon if it's not there before you begin to panic. And then on May 8th, copies will be emailed to the superintendents. We always try to give directors a week to have those determinations before we send them to the superintendents. And I believe those will be coming from Susan Shipley. So any questions or concerns around or questions about the timeline for determinations? All right. One of the things that Susie and I noted this morning that as of today, there are still several districts that have a 0% response rate for you this year's indicator 8. And so, just if you've seen, response rate is now a part of determination. So it's in SpedLink. You should get in and look to see where your district is. If you have questions or concerns, as a matter of fact, we know it's extremely current because Susie and I just checked as of this morning, all of Data Driven uploaded all of the most recent paper ones that they've gotten in. So please hop in there and look to see where your district is so that it's not affecting you next year on determinations. Remember, you have until June 30th of this year to get those in. So be sure that you look at that. Remember that WDE is no longer mailing out any of those surveys. It is completely on the districts to get those submitted. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to us. All right. And with that, we have just a little survey. If, oh, Susie, could you do, there's a question in chat. Can you pull up SpedLink and show them where the determinations will be?
Yes. So you will go to the 21-22 school year, and when you select your district, it'll say determinations on here.
So it's under the static reports.
Yes. Oh, I forgot a key step, static reports here. And so if you just want to try it out, you can go to 2021 and click on determinations. You'll see your determinations from last year. I won't go ahead and click through. I don't want to call up anyone's report, but that's where you go, static reports.
Sheila, this is Julie Nass. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Julie.
Thanks. Indicator 8, a while ago, you guys were sending emails just kind of updating where we were as districts on those response rates. Is that something you guys are going to do? Those were really helpful. Like, hey, you're at 15% or 20%, so that we kind of had a gauge on where we were.
So Julie, we quit because it is now. So Susie, do you mind pulling that up in SpedLink so that we can show them?
Yes. So if you go to SpedLink and click on collections and indicator 8, and then you would go over here, make sure it's 22-23, that should be the default. And I won't actually click on it because I don't want to share anyone's results, but then you'd go over to preliminary reports and click on response rate, and that'll tell you how many surveys your parents have completed.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You bet. And also, Julie, there's, as you can see, item frequency and measurement reports in there. So Susie, do you want to talk a little bit about that with?
Yes, let me just see what I get when I actually click on it.
It shows the survey and how many people
Okay.
responded in what way.
Yes. And so this shows the state results here. And so we can see that there's been 3,784 parents that have completed a survey, which is great. And so when you click on it, it would just be for your district. And so you can see how they responded to each question so far. and as well as the demographics. You can see the range of responses you've received from that. And
that-
then the other, go ahead, Sheila.
I was just gonna say, and that was in response to some districts who were probably larger ones who requested to be able to use that data in more real time rather than waiting for a year to get it. And so that, I think that went live right around Christmas time, right, Susie?
Yes.
We sent that, I thought we sent that out to our director, so maybe we missed it or you missed it. And then the second one shows,
Is this one here, the preliminary measurement report. And once again, you can see your response rate as well as your overall parent involvement score, the percentage, and if you met the target yet, as well as some graphs and an explanation.
all right, good question, Julie. Thanks for letting us share that. We were super excited. We were super excited to get that.
I'm sure I received the email and I appreciate it. It just takes a couple times to hear it for it to sink in. So thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Susie threw a link into the chat. If you would just do a quick evaluation for us. We are trying to, Susie and I have some time on the calendar to plan to start talking about next year. And we would like to know what it would be helpful to you guys for us to kind of talk about in these data dives. And so with that, I appreciate your time today. And thank you, Susie, and thank you, Suzanne, for being here. Anybody who's missed it, we'll have data driven post it to the WIN website. So I know there's a lot of people that are gone today, but so thank you.